Welcome to Shoot Straight Parenting, where we talk about how to aim high, shoot straight, and launch children for success.
I'm Ted.
And I am Jen. And today we are talking about confidence. How to instill confidence in your children, how to ensure that they can go through life knowing that they have everything they need to succeed, but not be
cocky little shits. Yeah, it's a fine line, or it can be a fine line, with not creating someone who thinks they're too good or too cool for school, so to speak.
Yeah, I think we can often conflate confidence and ego, or confidence and arrogance. But we're talking about real confidence. So how do you describe confidence?
I'd say it's just the ability to walk into any situation, not feel overwhelmed, feel comfortable in myself. It's a tough question to answer because you need confidence in every aspect of your life.
Well, and knowing what you don't know. There's an actual confidence in being able to admit that you're not great at something.
Yeah, because cocky people can't do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think confidence is trusting in your own abilities. It's trusting in your own capacity and trusting your own judgment, or knowing where not to.
Yeah, and there's also a complete different aspect of not really caring about what other people are going to think of you.
Not allowing it to change who you are.
Right.
Being confident in who you are enough that their opinion might matter in the sense that they matter to you, but their opinion doesn't change what you know about yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think from a more basic perspective, you have to have a certain amount of knowledge about something. You have to have a foundation or a baseline.
Right. Your confidence has to be built on something.
Yeah, yeah.
And confidence is what helps us move past difficulties, keep trying, keep working towards something because of that baseline understanding and knowledge of what you have. Confidence is this combination of two things that are both really important. One is self-esteem, right? That's how a person evaluates their own worth. But it's also the self-efficacy. It's that believing in your own capacity and ability. So I think both of those together are what makes confidence.
But confidence isn't just internal. There's an external aspect to confidence that can have cascading positive effects on everyone. It builds up. It doesn't tear down.
Absolutely.
Again, if properly managed and exhibited, right?
Right. Healthy confidence.
Yeah. It's a pillar, a hallmark of good leadership.
Absolutely.
When you mentioned ego before, I talk about this a lot actually with my clients, entrepreneurs, right? Egos are not a bad thing.
They are not.
Every successful person in the history of the world has had an ego. Used properly, they are incredibly effective, a big piece of someone's confidence.
You want to follow leaders that are confident.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. When you have confidence, it builds credibility immediately.
Yeah.
Anyone with an inkling of emotional intelligence is going to pick up on your confidence right away.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It helps others feel safe and comfortable in certain situations, and it can definitely also motivate and encourage others to follow you, to your point about being a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. When you just think about being in a situation where there's uncertainty, if I know where I have the ability to excel, and when I don't, I want someone in the room who does, right? I want to follow someone who is confident. It does make me feel safe and comfortable for sure. It's interesting, prior to thinking through this podcast, I never really thought of confidence as being so multifaceted. You think of it as just maybe a singular or a flat personality trait, but it really is very encompassing. And it's not just arrogance or cockiness. Those are just shallow facades of confidence. True confidence is actually really beautiful.
Yeah, I guess I've always known there are many aspects to it. It brings me back to my original confidence story. For as long as I can remember, for as long as I could walk myself into a high school football game or any kind of event where it would cost a couple of bucks to get children in, my father would always say to us as we were walking up, approaching the ticket stand, he would say, hey, walk right through and just walk in like you own the place.
Which when Ted first told me the story, I was horrified. I was like, you guys went in and you didn't pay?
I think we always thought that that's just the way it was. And that's what everyone did. Like, we didn't know any different. And we just walked right in, literally like we owned the place. And I never, ever remember being questioned, ever. And my father never paid for his kids to get into any kind of event.
Which there's still a little part of that kind of horrifies me. But I think for all the years that you have told our kids that story, the positive effects of the confidence is so much greater than, they understand that we ought to be honest and we should pay for things and that business owners deserve to be compensated for the things that they're selling. However, generally speaking, I love the idea of just building that confidence in your kids.
So sorry to all the high schools that didn't get my dollar, but
yeah, now is when we really actually should do it, because it's like $12 to get into a high school sporting event now.
We should go to Disney and try it there.
Maybe. Except for then we'd actually have to go to Disney.
I know.
Yeah, no, thank you. So we've talked about what confidence is. Why would we want our children to be confident?
Oh, there are many reasons. Children with high confidence are definitely more resilient. They're capable of bouncing back from failures, from really any setback.
Yeah, because they understand that their value is intrinsic and they're confident in their ability to overcome and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and it's almost self-perpetuating.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think so.
If they're inherently confident, they view that setback differently. And they know that if they change one small aspect about the environment, about their attitude, about some variable in that situation, they can easily overcome it and get back to the point they were.
Absolutely. In researching this, I did find that children with high confidence, they actually are able to manage stress better. And confidence in early childhood is linked to creativity, problem solving, and initiative. Confident children are more likely in school to lean in academically, ask questions, participate in class, and engage deeply in their schoolwork. It kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But we have confident children who lack a little bit of initiative. So I don't want anyone taking away that confidence is all they need.
No, absolutely not. They actually need to have their phones taken away so they will get their homework turned in on time. I think that's what they need.
Yeah, I said initiative. It's probably just laziness. Children who are confident definitely form healthier relationships that aren't based as much on comparison, but really based on their own self-worth.
Yeah. So children who are confident have better communication skills, higher emotional intelligence. A study published in 2019 that studied over 300 adolescents showed that those who had confidence actually had higher life satisfaction and had a lower chance of being neurotic. So those are good enough reasons for me. Who wouldn't want all these positive, healthy attributes for their kids?
Agreed.
So we have talked about what confidence is and what the positive benefits are of instilling confidence in our children. So how can we ensure that our kids grow up with true confidence, with the real confidence, and not just cocky attitudes?
We can start by teaching them what emotional intelligence is, right? And
That's a good one.
Yeah, knowing your surroundings, picking up on clues, always having a plan, responding rather than reacting. We could go on forever here, right? But that's the key. And I think everything else is built upon that.
Yeah, I think emotional intelligence is probably something that we don't talk about enough in context of children. But it is so important to teach them how to read a room. So
yeah, the tough part about it is it's so all-encompassing. It covers so many things. But I think it is important for the kids to understand that all of those things fit within emotional intelligence, and they all work together, and they all play a part in the confidence piece
Yeah.
as well.
I think the most important piece of confidence is, where does their value come from? And so focusing on the fact that their intrinsic value is in just who they are, not what they do, not what they bring to the table. Those things are important, right? We want to encourage them to do good things. We want them to bring value into the room when they come in. But we believe that their value comes in why they were created and whose image they were created in. But regardless of what your faith background is, there's still such benefit in teaching your kids that they are enough just the way that they are. And that self-assurance is the foundation for confidence.
It's not about being perfect, but it's about getting better every day. And they can be moving onward and upward and still be confident in where they are. And I feel like this discussion about confidence, even as we're having it right now, my mind is just, confidence just builds upon itself.
Yeah.
Right? When they have that confidence in who they are, and that enables them to grow as a person, they see the benefits of that growth and what it does for them, and then they have the confidence to do more of that. And to your point, though, it's not a confidence that they will be a gazillionaire. Right? There's so many, call it materialistic, extrinsic things, but it's confidence that they can and should be a good person.
Yeah.
And then that everything else will come from that.
Well, and it's part of building confidence is that actually they do need to compare. They just need to compare to the right thing. So they need to compare to the standard, not to others. We have high standards. We don't apologize for expecting excellence. That's different than perfection. If our children are always looking at other people and comparing themselves to other people, well, they could be comparing to the best version of someone else when they're going to see the worst version of themselves. They could be comparing to something that has matured and has grown in someone else when it's still brand new in them. They could just be starting a sport when someone else has been playing it for years. And so you can't compare to other people. Plus, you could compare to other people and the other person's standards could be really low. And that could give you a false confidence. So I think comparison is good. It needs to be the right kind of comparison. Let's go back to the standard. What is our expectation for excellence in this situation? Were you kind to someone else? Did you do your absolute best? Do you feel pride in what you did? Are you proud of the effort that you gave? If that's our standard, then yeah, we should hold them to that and we should compare to that. But let's make sure that's what we're comparing to and not to other people's results, other people's perfectly curated versions of themselves.
Yeah, I agree. You have to make sure that what they're comparing to is genuine. And I always think of this stuff on Instagram where you see an influencer sitting in a plane and they're showing off their private jet. And then the picture right next to it is the fake steps into the private jet that they just climbed into to make the picture. Be careful to not compare yourself to that. They're just setting up false expectations for themselves. So yeah, compare, but do it carefully and verify that what you're comparing to is accurate and that there's somewhat of a level playing field.
Right. It's also really important to make sure that our kids understand where their validation comes from. So their value, we already talked about, should come from truth. They should only compare to the right things. But then where are they looking for actual validation? Because, man, you can really build false confidence and arrogance by the wrong type of validation. So external validation sometimes can be great, right? If we're getting external validation from a professor that we really admire, or from other adults, or from good, true, authentic friends, that's the right kind of validation. But we don't want our kids to only be seeking shallow validation, which of course I immediately think of likes and comments on social media.
Yeah. And then let actions speak for themselves instead of bragging or boasting or showing off. I remember growing up and the kids who immediately would want to be the center of attention at all times and brag about everything they did. I knew right away, immediately, that person was not confident.
Yeah. It's almost like there's a stereotype of a person. The person who has a story for everything, who one-ups you on everything. They can't allow you to have the spotlight because they need to pull it back to themselves right away. I look at that type of a person and it's just like, man, you have no confidence. I feel like the insecurity just seeps out of people who brag and boast and constantly focus on their achievements.
Yeah. But think about this for a second. I was able to see that in a person standing right in front of me. It's totally different now because these kids are seeing all of those things online and they don't have anything in the periphery.
They don't have the context. Yeah. I agree. It is probably so much harder to see what is truth and what is just a fake. And then you get humble bragging on top of that, which can look like humility on the front, but really is actually a type of bragging. It's a rocky terrain for our kids to navigate and try to figure out what's authentic and what's not. So, any other ways that you can think of to instill confidence in our kids?
Yes, just ensure that they understand that they are going to failure.
They are going to failure. They will.
They need to understand that they will fail. And when they do fail, that is an opportunity to grow. And it's not a weakness. And every successful person in the history of the world has failed over and over again before they've become successful. And making sure that they reflect on what got them to the point of failure so that they don't repeat themselves.
Yeah, it's mom's favorite thing to say. It builds character. It is true, though. Every failure that they have is an opportunity for growth. And I think it's so important that we do give them autonomy, allow them to make their own choices. I can remember with each of the kids, I would make them go into the store on their own at some point when they were still quite young. Definitely elementary school, probably first or second grade, and buy a gallon of milk or buy a loaf of bread. I gave them a few bucks and told them where to go because they need to learn how to do those types of things. They need to have the autonomy. They need to figure out how to have the conversation with the adult. There's many other aspects, not just building confidence, but allow them to make their own choices. Allow them to be in a situation where they have to try to figure something out. They need to learn how to recover from a failure. They need to learn how to pivot when something doesn't go well.
Yeah. And just a side note, that doesn't stop when they're young either. Going into the store to buy a gallon of milk when they're 5 isn't the last go around with that. 2 of our daughters right now, one who went for an oil change recently and one who's dealing with an issue with her tire, and we're still working with them to be able to go in and work with people in those situations. Yeah. And the hardest part is saying no to something that is being offered to you.
Right. And if we just stepped in and said, okay, we'll schedule that appointment, or we'll go to the appointment with you, or while you're there, we'll answer all the questions that you have. Sometimes it's, okay, stop and think to yourself, what would dad advise me to do right now before I call him? It's so important for them to be able to figure those things out. And you know what? If they spend an extra $50 of their own money because they didn't understand the situation, they're going to learn from that, and they're going to have the confidence the next time to say, oh, whoa. So if we're going to allow them to make their own choices, we have to control our reactions and avoid stepping in. We're going to see it long before them. They're going to be making a choice that we know what the result is, and it's not going to be the best result. We got to control that reaction to those less than favorable choices that they make, because it builds a muscle in them when they do fall. And the consequences, they're not going to be that horrible, right? The stakes are low when the kids are younger. Allow them to fail while the stakes are low. If we never allow them to fail until they're older, man, the stakes get a whole lot higher when they're adults. So let them practice, control your reactions, allow them the autonomy to make those choices.
Yeah. So what else can we do to help them build confidence? I think that modeling a couple of things, modeling resiliency and modeling humility. As go the parents, so go the kids.
Humility is a good one because it goes back to knowing what you don't know. admitting that I don't know something or that I failed or that I really mucked something up, that's not a lack of confidence. That's actually a type of confidence to be able to say, yeah, I don't know everything. You do this better than I do. Here, you step in and do this.
Yeah. Praise effort, not just results. Not every kid needs or should get a trophy for everything they do.
I mean, it's two different things, right? So there is a trophy mentality that has pervaded society for a long time. And we want to be careful about making sure that we're never rewarding results, because results matter. But it is important to also recognize and praise effort. And that's just a part of instilling confidence. Is we want to make sure that we don't snuff out the flame if they're just starting and they don't get the result that they want. We don't want to just completely snuff that out. So we want to make sure that we encourage effort, that we're praising their effort, and not only results. A little bit different than the trophy mentality. And really, it's as much about recognizing perseverance and hard work. So even if they don't come in first place, even if they don't win the championship or get an A+, if we see that they're persevering and we see hard work, we do need to recognize that and praise that.
Yeah, my brother and I were just talking about this the other day because he told me about what our college's soccer team's record was this year. And throughout my entire soccer career, I played in college as well, I probably lost 90% of the games I played. And I can remember that my father never, or mother for that matter, they never said anything negative about that. They were always supportive of it unless they saw that I was a bum and that I was lazy on the soccer field. Then they would say something about it. But other than that, it was just all positive reinforcement. And I'm glad for that. I learned so much more from my quote unquote soccer career, having lost most of the games rather than won.
It's really important that we avoid overpraising and just praising generalities, and that we compliment specifically. Our children, their confidence needs to come from who they are. But let's be honest, not everybody does all things the exact same way with the same type of result. And so if we want our kids to grow in a certain area, then we need to be really specific. If you stop and think about the things that you've been praised for, the directionality of your life may have changed because of someone's very specific praise. I can remember my mom telling me that children brought out the best in me. And that changed the trajectory of my life and how many kids I wanted to have and what I ended up doing in my 20s and 30s, because she saw something in me. I know that there are people who work for me that I have promoted who didn't see something in themselves, but because I did and I spoke truth to them, specific truth, specific praise, specific compliments, it has allowed them to grow in confidence. Jordan Rayner wrote an excellent book called The Master of One, where he talks about this idea that we just follow our heart, and that if we don't feel something, if we don't feel a great way about our career, we should just give up. And he argues that sometimes love follows mastery. So when we lean into something that, yes, there has to be some inherent capability in that trade or in that line of work. And that, yes, we need to enjoy it to some degree. But if we do that and we really lean into something and we learn to master it, the love will also follow, because we get pride and we get confidence in doing something well. And so when we see something in our kids, and I'm not just talking about they do something well from a sports standpoint or they do something well on a stage, but I'm talking about when we see in our children that, yeah, they actually are very empathetic. They're a really good friend. Or, wow, they are very observant and they see things in other people. Or they're excellent with animals. Or they are good with other kids. Let's speak those things over them, because it will begin to build confidence in them. And it might not change the entire trajectory of their life, but it might.
Yeah. Yeah. General recognition is pretty easy and it's often shallow.
Yeah.
Specific recognition hits a nerve with people, and it creates an emotional reaction in them because they understand immediately that you were really paying attention to them.
Absolutely.
And that you put effort into paying attention to them. So at the end of the day, that emotional reaction is what's going to be of the most benefit.
A couple of other quick things that we should focus on when we want to instill confidence in our kids. We touched on this a little bit. Don't shield them from disappointments and failures. They will learn resilience from facing their failures. They will build confidence in trying again and getting it right the second time. They'll learn even more when they have to try it a third time and when they have to adapt and figure out a different way to do it. There is no better way to build confidence than letting your child fail and try it again. And when they do fail, let's discuss the failures with them. How did something turn out differently than they expected? What did they miss? Were they too impetuous? Were they lazy and they didn't put their full effort in? Why did they do poorly on that assignment? Let's read it through together and discuss what they did. We want to guide our children. We can't just throw them to the wolves and say, okay, figure everything out yourself. Although that is my parenting default, is to say, figure it out yourself.
Yeah, reflection is valuable. Sure.
So just to bring this podcast full circle, one of our boys was recently up for the Marine of the Year for the base that he is stationed at. He was one of about 40 Marines who had been nominated for this award. He was towards the end of the group to go in, and he watched Marine after Marine go into that room and come back out, and they looked shaky. They looked nervous. None of them looked particularly excited about having gone through that process. And he walked into the room, and there was one question that he did not know the answer to, and he knew it was wrong, and he answered it with utter confidence. And they asked him a second time, and he gave the exact same answer, which he knew was wrong, with utter confidence. And they asked him a third time, and he gave the answer with utter confidence, to the point that his staff sergeant started laughing, and he ended up getting the award. He ended up getting the Marine of the Year. And when we asked him why, he said, I just remember what you and Papa always said, which was walk in like you own the place. So we can instill confidence in our kids. We can make sure that they have the right kind of confidence, which is based on who they are, an intrinsic understanding of their value, where it comes from, trusting in their own abilities, but also knowing their own capacity. When you put those things together, it's the right kind of confidence.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of Shoot Straight Parenting Podcast, and we will see you back next time.